Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 12, Episode 150. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us here this Friday, Steelers Nation. Dave, how you doing?
I'm probably doing better than you are, aren't I? Because I have AC and you do not.
Yeah, as you like to say, of course, the AC goes out only whenever it's going to be like 90 degrees this week.
Yeah, absolutely. Murphy's Law. It never goes out when it's 68, and
Right.
a breeze or whatnot, and all like that. So I'm definitely praying for you. I have lived long enough where I have been there and done that too many times, unfortunately. So hopefully you get somebody out there to take care of it on this Friday. And speaking of Friday, are we going to have a DeShaun Watson? Is today? Is today going to be the DeShaun Watson news dump here, afternoon at some point?
Well, I admit last week, I was pretty confident today would be the day, but according to reports, and no one knows all the answers, but according to some of the national media, they seem to believe it won't come until next week, seems to be the week. So we'll see. It's always possible. It's in the hands of Sue Robinson and when she decides to file her report, but that figures to be a lengthy, in-depth, 40-plus page brief. And so the consensus seems to be next week for DeShaun Watson.
All right, and one thing we know that today is the deadline on is the players under the franchise tag that have been yet to sign long-term deals. Obviously, the Steelers don't have any such players, but there is one within the division. One Jesse Bates that is going to with the Bengals, the safety there. Going to be interesting to see if they work out a long-term deal with him. I think at this point, and I think the report last couple of days has been they're not expecting to get done. But as we've seen, and much was the case with Geno Malkin, deadline spur actions. By the way, are you happy Geno's back?
I am. I understand sometimes this play can be frustrating, but man, I just don't want to break up that band together. The Duke can still play. You keep Letang, you re-sign Rust, you get Malkin, Raquel. I think you're pretty happy with all that.
Yeah, I think the most frustrating thing with him sometimes, well, as of late, is obviously his health, being able to stay on the ice. And the second thing with his, sometimes he takes some stupid penalties, doesn't he?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want to turn this into Pins Depot, but I was rooting for that to happen. I know a lot of people thought that he was going to go to free agency and perhaps be gone. But and boy, I learned a little bit about the NHL salary cap and how that all works this weekend. Or this last week. It's a lot different. They do things a lot different than the NFL does. That's for sure. When it comes to that, because they work off of, I guess, an average yearly value, and that's a player's cap number, whatever the total amount of the contract is divided about the number of years, and that's the cap number, and it's an even cap number throughout the years. And you read into the whole buyout language stuff and how that, I mean, it is quite fascinating. It's just I've never had the time to kind of dive deep into how they do things there, but I was glad to see Geno get signed. But back to circling back to the NFL, I guess the overarching feeling is that none of these players that are currently on the tag that have yet to sign long-term deals are going to sign them by 4:00 today, which is the deadline.
Correct. It seems like Bates, that's not going to happen there. Bates wants to now top Minka's deal, and so that's not going to happen in Cincinnati. The couple of tight ends, Mike Gesicki out in Miami, Dalton Schultz in Dallas, unlikely to occur there either. The only one that could potentially, according to reports, is Orlando Brown Jr., the tackle, former Raven, now Kansas City Chief. Apparently they're still talking, just having difficulty reaching a number that both sides are happy with. So that may be the one to watch as you hit the deadline today at 4:00. But for Pittsburgh, nothing to worry about there.
Right. It's not like, and it's a perfect time to, I think, kind of segue this. You go back to the Le'Veon Bell and the franchise tag several years ago. and how things ultimately played out with him and Le'Veon Bell, obviously back in the news cycle these last few weeks, going to fight Adrian Peterson in a boxing match. I think the end of this month, something like that. Mm-hmm. And Bell took to Instagram the other day and wishes he had a time machine, right?
Sure. And it seemed like a semi-retirement post. He didn't explicitly say he was retiring from football, but I think everyone can see the writing on the wall, Bell included.
He's retiring unless somebody wants to pay him to play football, right?
Right. And it does not seem like anyone's going to come calling his phone anytime soon. So it was a long post that went down a lot of different paths, but the most relevant part for Steeler fans was the part where he said, quote, "Obviously, I wish things would have played out differently in 2018. Like if I legit had a time machine to go back to 2018, that would be so lit for so many reasons, but I don't." And so he doesn't, outright say what he would change. Would he play on the tag? Would he have accepted the Steelers deal? He never actually says what he would like to change if he could go back. But the message is basically expressing regret for sitting out that entire season.
Yeah, I saw that one coming. I mean, yep. Just look. I mean, you could feel this kind of thing coming with him, and hate to dig up old conversations here, but back then the Steelers, the guaranteed money was the signing bonus. They didn't guarantee any more than really the first year of the deal. That said, it certainly seemed from kind of the stuff that was leaking out there that they had offered him a fair deal as far as cash flow went and all like that. The only thing that wasn't stacking up properly in him and his agent's eyes was the guaranteed money. And the Steelers, however, did and do have the long running record of players that they signed to long-term deals, for the most part, generally earn every penny of those contracts, but still is guaranteed. And all that he was going to get guaranteed in that deal was probably the first year money. And that obviously wasn't enough. And he thought he'd see just how green the grass is on the other side of the fence. And as we've seen time and time again, there obviously have been exceptions to the rule. Emmanuel Sanders, I think, has done good outside of Pittsburgh, and there's been a small handful of others that have done good outside of Pittsburgh. But him being a running back and everything that goes along with that, and his attitude at the time, going to the Jets, and of course with Adam Gase, and man, this thing got off the rails real quick for him in a hurry. And now you turn around and we're right around the 4-year mark now, right? From 2018. In fact, that deadline was what? I think it was July 15th that year. So here we are, 4 years exactly to the date. And
what is the anniversary gift for the 4-year franchise tag deadline? Is that something blue?
Yeah, let's show him what he won. I don't know what the 4-year anniversary date gift is there. I'm surprised you know that. You're going to have me Google that now, aren't you?
If you want to, feel free. But you're right. I mean, as you Google that and let the listeners know, he goes to the Jets, and there's the issue with Mike McCagnon, the GM who signed him, gets fired a couple months later. And the reason why you stay in Pittsburgh is they may not pay out the most in terms of guaranteed money and the structure of the deal, but there's going to be stability, consistency. You know what you're going to get. You're going to be treated well, treated fairly, and have a good career. And Bell missed out on all those things. And the second he signed with the Jets, or really the second that he decided to skip out the 2018 season, that was the beginning of the end of his career.
Looks like traditional gift theme is fruit/flowers in the U.S. Let's see, electrical appliances as a modern gift theme. The gemstone is blue topaz. Maybe that's where you got the blue from. Had you heard that before?
I was just taking a shot in the dark.
And the color is blue / I guess green or whatnot. So
he got something green, I guess. Just not what he wanted, I suppose.
Yeah, and he's feeling blue now, isn't he?
Yeah. Be here all week.
Yeah. Tip your waitresses in Trideville, please. Yeah, I mean, look at where he's at now, and this is a guy that, look, had he stayed on that contract and stayed healthy, they weren't going to run him off. He would have had to have a couple of, even after his had he signed that deal, but back in that first season that he had to tag, it would have taken a lot for them to have to run him out of town and not pay him, not get him through that entire contract. Now, what was there a chance that maybe he would have got into that last year and the wheels had been run off? Yeah. And obviously, being a running back and the injury and all like that, the injury concerns, all that being there, that was possible. But, just from a legacy standpoint too, I mean, we're talking about a guy that could have had 10,000 total yards real quick, right?
Sure. I mean, this guy, somebody asked me the other day, could he have potentially been on a Hall of Fame type path had he stayed in Pittsburgh? And obviously no one knows the answer, but he was moving in that direction to at least consistently be among the best backs in football, a workhorse dude, putting up 70, 80 catches a year, rushing for 1,100, 1,200 yards. Who the heck knows? I mean, he would have had obviously a really incredible and storied career in Pittsburgh. That was the track at least. And he goes to New York and it all falls apart. And essentially 2 years after signing that deal in New York, he's a journeyman just trying to catch on with any team that will sign him.
Right. And, you look at, he didn't do nothing last year. And he was with a team and barely did anything. So really his last really substantial work would have been the first year that he was with the Jets, right?
Yeah, he's kind of with Kansas City. Since then, he's bounced around so many teams. Tampa Bay, Baltimore couldn't even use him last year despite all the injuries they had in the backfield. They just fell apart so quickly. And listen, I don't begrudge him. I
don't hate the guy. I mean, but you could feel it coming. And here's the beauty of this when you look at it from me. I've lived long enough that I've made a lot of stupid mistakes, and I can see a stupid mistake coming a mile away now. That's the gift that I have at my age and having been at all that I have been through. And Lord knows I have made more than my fair share of them. And obviously following the NFL and things as long as I have, and you remember me writing and talking about all that time, say, man, he's just silly. And I think he's getting bad advice from Adisa Bakari. I understand the guaranteed. I understand why he did what he did. But it was easy to say way back then that, this is probably not going to turn out very good for him at all. And it absolutely, and then you throw in just kind of his attitude that he's had along the way. That hasn't helped on top of it. This thing, look, I understand the whole guaranteed money talk is the guaranteed money talk. And if that's enough to drive you away, then I guess I get it here. But we're talking about a legacy right now that, does he really even have one? And will the Steelers give him one at some point? Like, I don't know, the Ring of Honor or Hall of Honor, right. Is that possible for Le'Veon Bell?
I think it is. And I was going to say, I don't think he's burned the bridges the way that Antonio Brown burned the bridges in Pittsburgh. I think Bell made a bad choice. I think he was chasing that kind of money and just made a mistake. And I think he seems to see that now. So I'm not going to harp on that. But I think there's a better chance to more quickly and more likely mend the fences that have been kind of, broken a little bit. And I think it's even possible if he wants to retire as a Steeler and sign the one-day contract, I think Pittsburgh could theoretically be open to that. I don't know that for sure, obviously, but I'd like to think at some point down the road that everyone kind of makes up and smooths things over.
Look, what he put on Instagram the other day, it was at least moving in the right direction, I think. But I think there's one more version left of that probably needs to go out there. You know what I'm saying?
What do you think that looks like? Like an apology or
yeah, basically. Look, I would. I'm sorry for the things I've said, the things I said about because you remember he jumped in on the Ben Roethlisberger bandwagon as well too at some point. What wasn't the interview at SI or something like that kind of jumping in, taking shots at Ben.
Yeah, I vaguely remember. I think some of the Antonio Brown stuff's probably overshadowed some of the comments Bell's made along the way.
they weren't as near as bad as what Antonio Brown, was.
Mhm.
But I think he owes, and I think it'll come out at some point too. They always do with these guys. I think once it's done for sure, all of it, football, boxing, whatever he's going to be doing. Look, he's only 30 years old still.
Right.
That's the crazy thing about it. You turn around and this guy legitimately could, had things maybe gone different. I don't know. You don't know what how the skill set would have been enough still, or his running style and all like that. But I mean, legitimately, he could still be in the league.
Sure. I think the lesson learned with the Bell saga was just the grass is not always greener on the other side. And he's not the first Steeler to find that out. And he's not going to be the last Steeler who goes on to try to play somewhere else to find that out. And that's the value of Pittsburgh, where, again, from a contractual standpoint, though things are shifting right now, maybe Le'Veon Bell wishes TJ Watt would have existed a little bit earlier, and that might have changed the landscape for him as well in terms of the guaranteed portion of things. But while Pittsburgh may be a bit more old school and a little stingy on that side of things, they're going to offer so much more than what other teams are able to do in terms of stability and reliability and just being fair and honest about, how they handle things.
I would like to see one more, long post with, I really messed this up and I messed my legacy up and I never had it better when I was in Pittsburgh and with Mike Tomlin and all my teammates there. And man, I'd give anything to retire as Steeler and see where things go from there. End quote, so to speak.
Sure. I mean, if you want, I don't know what all it is in his heart right now, but I think it seems like you can repair this relationship that was not nearly as broken as it was in the AB saga.
All right. Will it get repaired though? And will he one day end up being in the Hall of Honor?
Short answer, I think he will. I don't know that, for sure. In the next couple of years I don't write
think
that
he
story.
Will.
You don't think he will?
No.
I mean, it just seemed like more of a business thing of why he left, and it did get, messy at times, but it didn't feel as personal as it was in the Antonio Brown saga. And he didn't take shots at the Rooneys and at, every single person in that organization. And I feel like if you avoid that, you can, because, even with Terry Bradshaw, things were dicey at times, and that got repaired. So I think Bell can be mended as well.
Man, if he'd only listened to his, good lesson here, listen to your mom.
All right. Well, didn't his agent even say to accept the deal? I pulled up an article in the article that I wrote from back then that basically said his agent was telling him to accept the Steelers' final offer, and Bell refused.
Wasn't that after the fact or no?
I'd have to check. I mean,
I don't remember. I always I felt for a while that Adisa was giving him bad advice.
Oh, I'm sure. I think to a degree, and I'm getting paywalled by the Post-Gazette, but the headline was that Le'Veon Bell nixed a 5-year deal his agent wanted him to take, was essentially the headline a couple years ago.
Right, but that came from the PPG though, right? I mean,
yes.
We don't have Adisa Bakari ever on record saying that.
I don't think agents. I don't think he would ever do that and go on record and say that. But that was the reporting, which I trust to be true at this point.
You think it's true? I don't, but.
I mean, who knows? I mean,
yeah.
But that's the report. At least there's a report that says that.
I mean, we'll see how this turns out with him, and I don't obviously don't want to do a full podcast about him here. We've done quite a few minutes on him already here, but do you box if you have a good chunk of your $44 million left? Do you box at 30?
Yeah,
as a sideshow, because let's face it, that's what this is. At least right now, it's a bearded lady situation here right now with him and Adrian Peterson fighting. Now, if he handles his business and he looks good, then maybe this becomes more of a thing. But do you box if you have a good chunk of your $44 million left and not box as a sideshow?
Right. I don't know the answer to that. I understand there are so many athletes that get all this money and they lose it a couple years later. People that come into wealth, can quickly go as quickly as it comes. I don't know a situation. I know boxing, it's become so popular, and Jake Paul's doing it and AP's doing it, and you've had so many athletes or celebrities get into that space. So I don't know, maybe that's just kind of why he's being drawn to that, or if it's for financial reasons, but I guess we won't know the answers to that.
I mean, it's not like he's being paid $20 million for this fight, right?
What is he even being paid? Do we know?
I don't know if I know, but I couldn't imagine it. I couldn't imagine it being more than $1 million. I'll tell you that.
Right. That seems fair.
If it's even that,
Sure.
Look, I know why Adrian Peterson fights. That guy's had a lot of money problems. I think been had issues with taxes and all like that, and I think he's got a lot of child support out there, and that. I understand why, and I don't have an issue. I don't have an issue with either one of them doing it. Obviously, but. What I'm getting at here is I think he's a lot closer to being in a financial situation as Adrian Peterson is than more people think. And thus that's why this fight's coming to fruition,
Perhaps, but the dude's also 30. He's got to do something. And this seems like maybe something he would enjoy to do. So I don't really know.
Getting your head beat in at 30 after taking a lot of hits I don't know. I just think have at it. And look, maybe he'll look good on it. Maybe there'll be other fights after this. But to me, if I have a good chunk of my $44 million left, which obviously, here's one thing we forgot to ask Joel Corey. And every time I talk about Joel Corey, I think I need to ask him this, and I never end up asking him this. But what all goes into what players pay? Obviously taxes. A good 30% of that's coming right off the top, right?
Right. And isn't it where you get taxed based on the state that you play? So if you go for away games, you get taxed based on that as well. I want to say that's how that works.
But I just want to lump it all in one.
But sure.
Say,
it's like 40% for taxes, probably call that.
Yeah.
Roughly.
And I'm giving him benefit of doubt and saying he's going to be able to hide 10% of it, but 30% of what are you earning? Something like 42 million so far. Legal fees, agents, training. What all go? That's not cheap when you start adding all that up.
Sure. What I've heard is basically take a player's salary, cut it in half, and that's actually what he's netting. And not that anyone's going to feel bad for the guy making 20 million instead of 40 million, but that's kind of roughly the way to look at it.
All right. Well, then, I think he's got a couple of, past instances that he's having to pay for with children as well, too. And, I know he's bought a lot of jewelry over the years. And what about insurance and all, too? Players need insurance and insure a lot of that stuff. And I just wonder how much of that 40-something million he has left at this point. You know what I'm saying?
Sure. No, I get it. We can speculate, and I don't think about it too much. I have no idea, but I just know he's boxing. I will not. Will you watch him box, AP? I watched some highlights on Twitter, but I'm not going to sit down and actually watch the fight.
I'll probably watch it.
I know you're going to watch it. Yeah.
I'm like Spanky out the window. I always say, damn it, I'm not going to buy any more of these fights. And the next one rolls around, there's nothing on TV, and I buy the fight.
Right. I will say the celebrity boxing stuff has become super popular. How many times have you heard a story about some fight between two B-list celebrities? And that's kind of way that a thing a lot of people are doing these days. Yeah,
but I get more aggravated about those than I do any of them there. I've obviously bought some UFC, fights and all like that and think, man, that wasn't very good. But I think the celebrity ones have been the ones where I go, man, they just suckered me into my $60 or whatever it was and all like that. But I am that sucker and that, and I'm blessed where I can afford it, on top of what else am I going to do at home, so they end up getting my money every damn time, though.
Right.
So I am a little bit of intrigued. I got to admit, I'm a little bit intrigued because Adrian Peterson's a bad, for him to play in the NFL as long as he's played in and all like that. I am kind of interested in seeing it. So, yeah, I think they will get my money. I'll report back to you.
Thank you. And that is, I want to say July 30th. Not that I want to promo this, but I believe that's the date for the fight.
All right. We did our job in hyping the fight there, but I thought it was a rabbit hole. We don't have a lot to talk about today, but I thought it was a rabbit hole worth going down there.
Let's talk about Mitch Trubisky. You've done some study on the vertical passing game and some of his history, Trubisky's, stats in terms of throwing deep. And we know that's been such a invisible component of the Steelers offense really the last 2 years since Ben came back. And I think people talked about, Ben's arm being the issue so much coming off the elbow surgery in 2019. To me, it was the knees, and so much of your power in terms of your deep balls derived from the ground up from your knees. I think his knees were always the bigger issue than the elbow and the arm ever was. But all that to say is, from the data that you pulled, you're seeing some encouraging numbers and signs when it comes to Trubisky's deep ball and the potential impact it can have on the Steelers' 2022 offense.
I mean, I wouldn't say I'm finding anything encouraging,
Well, okay. Well, you tell me how you would phrase it then.
Well, I will say this, and we've already kind of talked about Trubisky and the deep ball a little bit after he got signed, right? I mean, didn't we talk about that a little bit throughout the process here? It feels like we have. I've probably written about it before too, but it was something that I wanted to revisit. When you look at Roethlisberger specifically, dating back to 2017, I think. And we talked a lot about this over the last couple of years too, and people just didn't want to buy it. I don't think. Here's the facts, folks. Ben has not been great with the deep ball since prior to 2017. End of story. You go back, and by deep ball we mean 20 yards in the air or longer completion percentage. You go back to 2018. Regular season was the last time that was his highest completion percentage, and that was just 31.17%. And that's not great, Bob. And you look at, just according to Sports Info Solutions, the average completion percentage for all passes of 20 yards or longer during regular season play dating back to 2017, and Lord, there's a lot of them, right? 2017 to 2021, regular season, every pass thrown 20 yards or longer, the average completion percentage is 36.2%, right? 36 points, so over a third of the passes. Now, remember, that includes, passes by all position players and punters and everybody, So 36.2% is just the raw average number. And Ben was never even really close to, in fact, 5% off in 2018 from a 36.2% number. All right. So that's a starting point there, but it's something that we have talked about over the years. I don't think a lot of people wanted to believe it, but it is what it is. It is what it was. It is, in last season, we talk about deep ball last year, 30.5% of 59 pass attempts. Now, were all of them, I'm not going to sit here and say all of them were Ben, and man, Ben should have got some help, and Claypool and the drops. Yeah, all of that factors into this, but it's not like you couldn't cherry pick for every quarterback, across the board in this. The fact of the matter is, Ben just hasn't been great at it for a little while now. You go back to 2000, and I think 17 was his best on target percentage, and none of this are shots at Ben Roethlisberger. I've been called a Ben Roethlisberger hater since I think 2006, and everybody know, if you really know and read and listen, that's not the case. But my job is to present facts, and this is part of the facts here. Anyway, so we can both agree, Alex, right, that Ben Roth, at one point, Ben was obviously a lot better with the deep ball, but since 2017 specifically, we can agree that Ben's not been one of the better deep ball quarterbacks in the NFL. However, he did have a nice share of deep ball touchdowns during that span, and thank God he did, because that really kind of helps bail him out, a little bit there because of some of those completions actually going for touchdowns there. But we can agree that since 2017, Ben has not been great with the deep ball.
Agreed. The data bears that out.
All right. What about Mitch Trubisky so far during his career? slightly better he's had a couple slightly better individual years, 2018 and 2019. In 2018, he had 34.38% completion percentage on deep balls of 20 yards or longer, and that's his best. Now, remember, folks, that's 34.38, and the average from 2017 to 2021 was 36.2. So he's not at the average. Now, Ben Roethlisberger from 2017 to 2021 had an average completion rate of deep balls of 29.1%. And of the 39 quarterbacks that had 97 or more regular season attempts dating back to 2017, only 4 of them had a lower completion percentage than Roethlisberger. Those 4 quarterbacks: Joe Flacco, Blake Bortles, Drew Lock, and Sam Darnold. Not exactly the list that you probably want to be, compared to there. Mm-hmm. Not great company. Now, in case you're curious, of those 39 quarterbacks from 2017 to 2021, their average completion percentage was actually a little bit higher than the actual total league average. It was 37.1%. All right. So we got that with Roethlisberger. Trubisky's best season to date was, like I said, in 2018, 34.4% completion percentage. Additionally, from 2017 to 2021, he had just a 29.9% completion percentage on all regular season attempts of 20 yards or longer. That ranks him 33rd overall on the previous list of 39 quarterbacks that I just mentioned to you, and just 2 spots ahead of Roethlisberger. The player that ranked in between Trubisky and Roethlisberger was none other than Andy Dalton. So that's the stats. Now, stats are stats, right? There's a lot of missing. The first thing in there, the first pushback, the people listening to this podcast who now own Mitch Trubisky jerseys, God help you if you are one of those people, is why this lacks context. These are just raw stats. He played in Chicago for Nagy. He was set up to fail in Chicago. Didn't have the same talent in Chicago. Yada yada. Okay, all right. There is a lot of they're like every other quarterback. Probably a couple of drops in here as well too. But working with numbers, and especially deep ball numbers that I've worked with over the years, and this is not a great sign. Might he be better? Here's my thoughts on it. Can Mitch Trubisky at least get to a 36% completion ratio or rate on balls of 20 yards or longer down the field? I think that's got to be at least the bottom end target when it comes to him. And even the 36% is going to be below average, right? But it feels like 36% based on other quarterbacks and playoffs and successful season. It sort of feels like that's where this number at least needs to be. And remember, his career average so far is 29.9. So he's got to complete basically 7% more of his deep passes than he has for his career to get to 36. And if he does that, I think that's one hell of a jump.
It would be. I mean, to let me have you answer the question you asked. Do you think he can do that? It sounds like you're not optimistic he can. Okay, fair.
All right. Now, here's in fairness, you want to talk about context. Well,
okay.
I said, you know what? I want to go back and look at 2018 when he completed 34.38% of his 64 deep ball attempts. He had completed 22 of them to get to that point. I said, you know what? Let's go back and look at those. Let's go look at the 22 and see if anything sticks out, maybe schematic wise or something along those lines. Can we pick anything out that gives us hope that, okay, well, maybe they can get back to doing this. You know what I'm saying? With him. Well, I pulled all 22 of those plays, I pulled the all 22 on the all 22, and it took a good hour to do it. But you know me, I will go through hell or high water to get what I need in here. Now, I know you have watched a good deal of them, half of them, I think. I've watched all of them, and there is a lot of blown coverages in there. There are a lot of out and ups in there. There's there are some good. There's a lot of them are
slot
outside.
Fades. Yeah, you got some slot fades
right
in there.
There's a couple slot fades in there, which are nice. 2 to 3, I think, exact that were nice. There was a back nice hit. His best throw might have been that back shoulder one, I think, against the Lions down the left field side.
Okay.
To me, that might have been his single best completion of those 22 overall. But there was a lot of the other noise in there. One was a Hail Mary at the end of the game against the Patriots. One was an extended play run around, I think, against the 49ers. I'm talking a good 4 or 5 second, extend the play where the receiver comes back and catches it right along the sideline there. I think there's like 5 blown coverages in there where guys just wide ass open. Trying to think. There were a couple of nice kind of seam up, seam balls, against, I think, like, zone coverages there. But I got to be honest, and I went into it as open-minded as I possibly could be, because I wanted to find a secret here. I wanted to unveil the secret to Mitch Trubisky being a lot better in 2018. My takeaway was not that. It was more a lot of noise in there, if you will. Now he did make some good throws. I don't want to say that, that he didn't, but there was just a lot of noise in there, I think, that kind of diluted the numbers.
No, I understand that. And the stats are the stats, and that's important. And you don't want to try to context or, speculate and try to remove those numbers. But he does have a better arm just overall than what Ben had the past 2 years. Is that fair to say?
I guess.
Just in terms of arm strength.
Yeah. Now his on target percentage, I'm gonna read this to you, and it's look, on target this is something that Sports Info Solutions, who does a great job at this, tracks, but it is a bit of a subjective stat, and people will push back. The people that bought the Mitch Trubisky jerseys will push back and say, well, that's a subjective stat. It's like, did they get it right all the time? But another stat that is of a concern as it relates to Trubisky and these 39 quarterbacks that I talked about with, what did I say, 97 or more regular season deep pass attempts dating back to 2017. Of those 39, Mitch Trubisky's on target percentage of 41.3% on deep passing was the worst of the group.
Yeah, but I'm just talking about just like the ability to push the ball down the field. I think Trubisky's,
the actual arm strength.
Sure.
Yes. Look,
okay.
Ben last year, I mean, really the last 2 years, and last year specifically, as you mentioned, with the knees and all like that, he couldn't put that thing down there.
Right. And with a better supporting cast, and I'm with you that I try not to use those things as crutches too often. I think you can still judge quarterbacks based on their own play. If you have to make a bunch of excuses for the quarterback, that tells you a lot about the quarterback in and of itself. But it will be a better supporting cast in Pittsburgh. I think it is a good scheme, a good system fit overall for him. Play action, rollouts, things are going to work well in Trubisky's wheelhouse. And so I think it's reasonable to think there will be some uptick in those career numbers for Trubisky in Pittsburgh this year.
You're going to have to scheme very well for this, right?
Sure. I mean, you knew that going in. Trubisky's not this high-level quarterback. The scheme and the system's going to really have to play a big role, and the receivers are going to have to help out as well. Chase Claypool's going to have to win consistently more of those 50-50 balls than they did last year. He's going to have to be able to time his jumps better, not leave his feet, things like that. But you have some weapons and some guys who can maybe make up for the quarterback if he's slightly off on a throw.
Do you think he can hit the 36% number?
I do. Maybe I'm being a little optimistic about that, but I think you're going to see an emphasis on the vertical attack. I think you have more speed on this offense overall. You're going to have more play action. I think they're going to be able to work the field more in terms of all areas of the field. Ben was so outside the numbers centric. I think you will get to see Trubisky take some more middle of the field type shots. And so all that being said, I think you have the ingredients are there to reach that number. And that's not a great number to reach. It's not like it's a top tier number, but I think
it's great for him.
It's great for the Steelers.
Right. It'd be 1.6 better than his best completion percentage on deep balls to date, which was 2018.
Right. So I think he can do that.
If he doesn't hit 36%, this offense is in trouble. Right.
Yeah. I think the big number for the offense is the run game.
Right. Well, obviously the run game's got to be there, and if the run game's there, it's going to help you a little bit more in the deep passing game.
Right. I mean, I know you know that play action. You don't have to have a great run game for play action to be successful, but it doesn't hurt. Yeah. No, I agree with you there. So I think if you ask me what's the most important number, it's more of those things. But yeah, if the deep ball percentage is like 29%, 28%, because to the other point is we know that Pittsburgh's offense is not going to be the methodical 10, 12 play drive system this year. They need to rely on the chunk plays. It's going to flip fields and Mike Tomlin's phrase of what chunk plays really take care of a lot of game planning or something to that effect, basically saying if you get the big chunk play, it really makes your life a lot easier. So they're going to need some of those big splash plays to help create their offense.
I mean, we acknowledge and have for a while that this team has got to do a better job of pushing football down the field in certain circumstances. They are going to have, the catch short, run long is just not something that you can rely on a week in, week out basis, especially when you're throwing short at 4 or 5 yards and trying to get your other 15 after the catch, right? I mean, now, if you're throwing 16 and needing the other 4, well, that's a different story. But this offense hasn't done that in a long time. And I don't think you're going to see overall. You should see an average depth of target go up just by default by not having Roethlisberger there. So we should see the ball push further down the field that way, almost regardless of who's under center for the Steelers. Go ahead.
Sure. The snap to throw time won't be 2.2, although I do push back on the number a little bit because, well, I know the RPOs influence that number quite a bit. And I think I'd love to know what Ben's snap to throw time was on non-RPOs. Obviously, it'd be higher. I don't know where it would rank relative to the rest of the league, but I think that's some context there with that stat. But sure, we expect these snap to throw times to be longer, which means you're going to be pushing the ball downfield probably further as well.
And if this team cannot produce explosive, if this offense cannot produce explosive plays at a higher level than they have the last 2 years, then it just doesn't matter, right?
Right. I mean, because you're unlikely to get a lot of explosive plays in the run game. You're not really built with that kind of speed in the backfield, which is fine by me. I can live with that. But you do want to have some of those chunk plays, and they've really struggled creating those big plays in the passing game, especially throwing the ball downfield as opposed to the catch short and run long and let Deontay or Claypool do something after the catch.
All right, what number does it have to be? Completion is 36 the number that it better be, or are you okay with lowering that a little?
Well, it's hard for me to say, well, 35 is no good, 36 is good. I mean, you want to see improvement, situationally. I don't know what number to really put it at. I think 36 is probably the best one to land on, but it's not like if they're at 35, it's going to be a mess, and 36 means we're all, going to the playoffs. But improvement, I would say at least Trubisky matching his 2018 number and hopefully bettering that is kind of the goal for this offense and for him.
Do you think he will? You think?
Yeah,
he will, right?
I'm more optimistic. I mean, it's hard to say for sure. One or two plays can change that, obviously, and receivers have to help out and those kinds of things as well. But I think he can.
All right, I'm going to, over the weekend, I'm going to try to take a peek back at some of the other deep balls, the actual completions. I mean, obviously, to go through every attempt that he's had throughout his career. I'm not going to be able to do, but I'm going to try to go back and I thought I was going to find something else in 2018 that made me go, oh, okay, I see. But there was a lot of noise in there. You know what I'm saying? No,
I understand. So it's a fair point and good study.
Try to look at all 22 of them.
Okay.
And let me know your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes the incompletions are more interesting than the completions too, or at least it's good to have all that pieces of the puzzle. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. I mean, I looked through some of them. I thought there was good accuracy. I thought he showed some good touch on, and those are completions, and you want to see what the incompletions look like. But I thought some of those slot fades and real outside the number type throws, I thought he had some really good touch on those passes.
All right, I might go look at. Would you like to see the incompletions from 2018 or?
Sure. I mean, how many would there be? That's probably a lot of plays to go through, though, I'm guessing.
You're guessing correct. What did I say total attempts were? I mean, there were 64, so there's another 42 of them out there, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's up to you. However you want to spend your weekend is your time, but I mean, if you want to
I live this life of just, the phone's always ringing. People are always wanting me to go. I have a very busy life.
Alex. Right. Yeah, I think you have a movie premiere this weekend. Your red carpet. You have a boxing match yourself. I think you're on the card. You're busy.
Yeah, my opponent. She's. Let me tell you, she's tough.
All right, my money's on her.
Yeah, it should be.
All right, Dave, where do you want to go from here? Cam Heyward reacting to Acrisure Stadium. And
that just rolled right off your tongue, brother Alex.
Just natural. And Heyward saying didn't seem to love the name, loved Heinz Field, but basically said it's all about it was a very heartfelt message. It's about the memories that you make inside the stadium is what really matters, not what you're calling the stadium itself. And Heyward hoping to make good memories at Acrisure Stadium.
You know what? I've already heard a lot of people talk about this. The major media heads, the local media heads, the bloggers.
Bill Cowher's now talking about it.
Bill Cowher's talking about it. What I thought Cam Heyward did the best job from what I've seen so far. To be quite honest, and I don't know how. And by the way, Cam Heyward's got a new podcast out. You should go support it. I think you can find it on anywhere you find podcast, Apple. I think it's on YouTube and all like that. So if you want to support him, make sure you go listen to that kind of stuff from him as well too. He's obviously trying to set the tone for post football at some point. Maybe get into media himself here, but I got to admit, what he had to say really, I think, hits home the most. And he says, all I've known is Heinz Field. Me watching football, but he says like Three Rivers, I didn't really watch. He says Three Rivers, but even time there, but every time there's a change in the stadium, I don't really put too much stock into that because as much as I've loved calling it Heinz Field. He says Heinz Field wasn't made by name. He says it was made because of the memories. It was made because you got to watch Ben Roethlisberger to Antonio Brown, the Immaculate Extension. He says it was made watching great plays like that or watching New England come into Heinz Field and watching the Steelers defense beat them. The memories, plays that are made at Heinz. He says the memories in plays that are made at Heinz Field, not the actual Heinz Field. And he goes on to say that they're probably going to come up with some sort of type of nickname, that kind of stuff there. But I thought he did the best job at kind of, trying to take both sides of this, if you will. I'm going to miss Heinz Field, but get over it. We'll make memories at Acrisure Stadium as well too. So I know that's not going to. Him saying what he said is not going to, cool the masses or anything like that. Look, if you want to sign a petition or whatever, or stand outside and picket or whatnot, have at it. If that's what makes your heart feel better and your mind feel better, have at it. But I'm going to tell you right now, it's not going to change a damn thing. And if you want to call it Heinz Field the rest of your natural born life, have at it. It's not going to change a damn thing here. It is going to take some getting used to. I know there's going to be several times that I say Heinz Field, but do know that when we write up articles, posts, we're supposed to put, the formal name, and that's Acrisure Stadium. And if I'm doing my job right, I'm going to be calling it Acrisure Stadium moving forward here. But I just really thought that Cam Heyward did a great job of kind of with his look and perspective at it, especially as a player.
Yeah, he's a really well-thought, well-spoken guy, and I appreciated that sentiment as well. There are actual petitions to change the name. I saw one on Facebook. I mean, as you said, that check has been cashed, and Art Rooney's going to look at that petition and say, put it in the trash. And that's not going to work, guys.
I mean, have at it. If that's the kind of thing that satisfies your soul, to feel like that you think that you can make a difference that way, by all means. I would never, if that's your passion, do it.
Yeah, I mean, you're wasting your time if you're doing it, but feel free. I don't care what you do with your free time.
Right. Maybe you grow as a person. I have at it. I might laugh at you. All right. But if that's deep down your passion is to think that you can get this overturned by creating a petition list and getting 100,000 signatures, have at it.
Yeah, I don't care if you get all 7 point whatever billion people in the world, it's going to still be Acrisure Stadium, because as long as Art Rooney's name is not on that petition, it's going to stay that way, and it will. But I'll give you. I'm
going to say something else that's going to upset the masses as well too, because I don't think we talked about this since the press conference the other day, right?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know what you're going to say, but yeah. I mean, go ahead.
I thought Greg Williams did a great job. I thought Greg Williams from Acrisure came off very genuine. Look, it's not his fault that Art Rooney II took his check, right? And if you want somebody to blame in all this, go after Thomas Tull.
Yeah, he's the one who talked to Greg Williams, got him to agree essentially.
And but watching that press conference the other day with Art Rooney II and Greg Williams, I really thought Greg Williams came off as sincere and not too prepared, polished, whatever. Maybe that's all the years of him being in the business industry and everything that goes along with that. But he really came off calm, cool, collective, genuine. People are gigging him for his first NFL memory being the Steelers' first Super Bowl win. He was born in 61? Mm-hmm. So that was probably pretty monumental when he was a kid, right?
Yeah, I don't know why anyone would make fun of him for that. That seems reasonable. I just wish his name wasn't Greg Williams. I just think about Bountygate and Greg Williams every time I think about that. But yeah, he did fine the press conference. Like, it's not his fault that Art Rooney, as you said, accepted his money. I mean, you can't begrudge the guy for doing that.
And Heinz has come out in their statement and pretty much said that it was more than what we wanted to spend, and I imagine it wasn't close. I imagine had it been close, Art Rooney II would have taken the Heinz money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was not close. I think Heinz made that very clear. So again, people will adjust. They'll get used to it. And I have a rare movie reference to offer here. A little Joe Dirt, Home is Where You Make It. And so they'll make it in Acrisure Stadium this year.
But anyway, I thought, why are you hating on Acrisure and Greg Williams? Can someone, just because you don't like the name or whatnot, why are you actually hating on those two people when they just made an offer and they're just trying to do business?
Sure. It's the internet and people will hate. And again, I don't like the name. I sure wish it was still Heinz Field, but we're going to call it Acrisure because that's the name and we're going to be accurate about Acrisure.
But I mean, if you're after the petitions and all like that, have at it. Good luck.
What'd you think of Cam Heyward's podcast or first episode ever? It's not just football with Cam Heyward, though. It mainly dealt with football, which is fine by me.
I think And if you go back and listen to season 1, 2, and 3 and 4 or 5 of the Terrible Podcast, there is some bad podcasting in there on my end. Especially
we should do that. We should go back. I'm going to find some early episodes of that.
Good luck with that.
As you're going to start to be deleting them the second you get off this call.
Well, here's the bad thing. The format that we use now. I know we've switched hosts over the years and all like that. I think some have been lost in transition, if you know what I'm saying. But anyway, I think he will get better at this.
Yeah, it was a little stilted at the top. Who's the other guy? I'm not even sure who that other guy is. I didn't pay a lot of attention to it, but is he a ESPN stooge or is it a buddy of Cam's?
I think he's kind of a friend of Cam's or something. I think.
Okay, that would make the most sense. I mean, I assume there'll be guests in the future. That'd be nice. I think.
I think even Kenny Pickett's coming up. They said.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. So that'll help. But it was good. It was fine.
I mean, look, for a first episode, I think it's fine. Now, look, he's no stranger to this, right? I mean, he's done NFL Network and all like that, and obviously appeared on other podcasts. I think he's going to, once he gets more comfortable in his own format, I think he's going to be fine. I mean, he's obviously light years away than what I was and that kind of thing. There was some awkwardness in there, and I think he's got to be careful of trying to pander too much. You know what I'm saying? Once you can let this thing, and you and I, or I think masters at this now, once you can just let your honest opinion and thoughts and personality come out in this thing, the better the shows are. If you try to get too contrived and be too contrary or contrarian or be too pro this or pro that or unnatural, I think the listeners feel it.
No, I get that. I think he was honest because he was asked about, the quarterback battle, and he said, right now Mitch is the guy, and he kept it an open competition. But I think he gave he didn't give the standard. Well, we'll just see what happens. And
I'm not pointing to anything specifically in there. I'm just saying that those are the trap falls that you see in these things.
Sure, no, you definitely do. But I thought he did well to avoid that and gave some honest answers that maybe you wouldn't otherwise give if the media asked you that during training camp or something like that. And so. That was good to see, I thought. But, yeah, it's a little different whenever kind of you're in the captain's chair and you're running the show as opposed to being a guest on an NFL Network spot and someone's just feeding you questions and you give a 30-second answer. Whenever you're the host and you're the guy over 45 minutes or however long it was, it's a little different dynamic.
Over the years, there have been several that have stuck out to me that I thought would have a chance. I always thought Ike Taylor would be great on the other side. And for a while, I thought he was okay. Now, obviously, he still has his own podcast and all like that. There's some aspects where I think he tries to become too pro Steelers, and obviously he's out. He's kind of got pushed out of the mainstream NFL Network aspect of it now. Ramon Foster I always thought was good on a mic, but I don't think he's been given a chance to go higher mainstream. Yet, I know he does the radio show obviously in his home state of Tennessee as well too, and that seems to be going well for him. I've always thought he's been good, on that side. Ryan Clark, I mean, that's another one. I think for a while there, I thought Ryan was trying too hard to have, contrary, the other side of the fence, Steeler thoughts. In other words, trying to separate himself from being too pro Steelers for a while. Right. But now I think he's done a good job of coming back towards the middle there. Arthur Moats, I think I thought Arthur would be better on the other side of the mic than he's been so far. And hopefully he can, you know what I'm saying? There's times where I think he's trying to cater too much to the Steelers crowd, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I know he does a really long show. It's like 3 hours or something with Deke. I mean, I generally enjoy it, and he gets always some good interviews and good connections. I mean, there's always critiques and stuff like that. I thought Ryan Clark just got caught up in kind of the ESPN machine of needing the hot takes, the scorching headline stuff, and so That's pretty typical of anyone that goes to the worldwide leader, because you end up kind of just transforming into this nuclear take machine because you're just trying to fight for attention and the headline of the day.
And I think Cam is on a good path right now. When it comes, Cam has a kind of that lovable teddy bear, right? Feel to him, where you kind of, he makes you smile when he talks, I think.
Yeah, but I think he's got to just loosen up a little bit and be a little bit more Cam and have a little bit more fun. But it's a first episode, so he kind of expect things to be a little more stilted and careful and awkward.
Once again, I'm not afraid to point the four fingers back at me, because the early days, disaster. In fact, there's still disaster. Half mine's my speech problem. That probably drives down the show quality when it comes to this show. But I mean, people either have gotten used to it now, or they've gone on listening to other things at this point. I think the content, with what we have, is just what sets us apart, makes us the top podcast.
Right. So anyway, a good debut episode for Cam Heyward, and I guess during the season he'll be doing it as well. I mean, that might be a tough thing to juggle, but we'll see.
Yeah, what happens. And they're going to be pushed back from that if Cam Heyward wasn't so busy concentrating on his podcast, and he'd have more than X amount of sacks. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I think my concern is going to be less about that, but Heyward trying to juggle how honest can I be about my team's season in the middle of the season,
sure,
and the headlines that's going to generate. Because if you're going to have a podcast about being honest and being authentic, you may have to say some things that's going to make some waves, and you got to.
And we're going to write about it.
Yeah, we will. And so you got to deal with how much do you want it to be authentic and real, and something for fans to really get a look behind the veil, or do you want it to just kind of be the more boring, standard fare, talking points, and that's going to create less headlines, but it'll make for a less entertaining show.
And if you're not winning, you're going to get asked about it.
Yeah, so we'll see, but excited to see what happens with that. And I think he's got a bright future in the media space, which it seems like he wants to do once his playing days are over, hopefully for not a long time. One other thing on Cam Heyward was, I've had this conversation in my head and a little bit on Twitter as well. What does Cam Heyward have to do to get into the Hall of Fame? He's kind of making that very late career surge into the Canton conversation. And I think if he makes 2 more All-Pro teams, and that'll give him 5 career All-Pro selections, essentially the only...
How many first team does he have at this point?
Is it all 3, or has there one been a second team? I was just going off of Pro Football Reference that had him a 3-time All-Pro. I'm
trying to remember if they were all. They are 3 first team All-Pros. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the All-Pro. He was All-Pro second team in 2020, but whenever Pro Football Reference, whenever it says All-Pro, that signifies first team All-Pro. So if he does 2 more, essentially, basically every defensive tackle with at least 5 All-Pro appearances have been in the Hall of Fame, except for Aaron Donald, who is still playing, of course, and will be a first ballot, and Kevin Williams. And Heyward's going to have better stats, I think better name recognition as well, because I think Kevin Williams was hurt by, it was Kevin and Pat Williams, and so it was kind of like you just thought about both guys and not them individually, and Heyward will dust him. He's already has more sacks than Kevin Williams ever did. And so if he does that, and then that would obviously mean he's going to get probably at least 2 or 3 more Pro Bowls. You finish our career with 8 Pro Bowls, 5 All-Pros, 100 and so sacks. That, I think, will put him into Canton.
Is it important to him hitting that 100 sack number?
I think the All-Pros are going to be more important than the actual sack number. But obviously with the All-Pros come sacks, and they kind of go hand in hand.
Okay.
So
I agree with you. I think a couple more All-Pros will get it done. And obviously the stats should be there that should back up the All-Pro, right?
Right. So again, those things obviously go hand in hand. So if he ends a career with, let's say he finishes with about 100 sacks, 5-time All-Pro, 8-time Pro Bowler, I think that'll get him in.
There's not that big of, when you think of log jams, right? Do you think of, there's a log jam for defensive linemen to get in?
I don't. I think that typically is one of the easier positions to get in. Pass rushers.
That's what I'm getting at. Is that
although DeMarcus Ware got snubbed this year. I don't know how DeMarcus Ware didn't get in.
Is that something that plays into his favor too?
The only thing that might hurt him is, Aaron Donald. I don't know. he's younger, Aaron Donald is, but is he going to retire around the same time that Heyward does? I don't really know what the plans are there. But
I mean, it might not be first ballot, but
Yeah, right. It's hard for me to answer in terms of any potential log jams and what the history of that looks like. I know receiver obviously has had log jams, offensive line has had log jams. I'm not sure the positions that have lacked it. Quarterback obviously doesn't typically have the log jam because guys get in so quickly. I don't really know what the landscape looks like at defensive tackle, but the history tells me if he becomes a 5-time All-Pro, first-team All-Pro player in his career, he'll make it in the Hall of Fame.
All right, we're on the backside of this now. Where are we going?
Alex Highsmith speaking on, was that Sirius? I'm trying to remember who's all speaking where these
Sirius,
days.
yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know if he didn't say anything earth-shattering either. His goal, though, is to hit 10 to 12 sacks. He wants double-digit sacks. We've kind of talked about that throughout the offseason. I think it's achievable. I mean, it's possible. If I had to bet on if he would do it, I would lean towards no, but I think his overall play will be quality in 2022 and pick up where it left off at the end of last year when he really got hot late in the year.
He's gained a little bit of weight, I think he said, overall. And look, this is, as we said earlier in kind of the 90 and 30 series here, right? This is a big season for him. If he takes that next step and last year at this time, we were talking about, we want to see more varied pass rush moves. We want to see him show that speed to power. And we actually did see some of that. So he went in the right direction, and the right direction next step for him now is, double-digit sacks. And let me tell you, if that line stays healthy, if all of them stay healthy up front there, he's got to be the beneficiary of this, right? I mean, you talk pick your poison up front. Do you really want to guard, singled up on Cameron Heyward? In other words, what I'm getting at, there's going to be opportunities for the Steelers to scheme Highsmith one-on-one against left tackles, and he's going to have his opportunities to impact games. And I do kind of like his chance. Now, not much more than it, but I think he could potentially hit 10.
Oh, I think he could. And like I said, he got hot last year, and that was a really encouraging sign. I think health tripped him up early in the year as well. But there is a thought of there were only so many sacks to go around. You are facing left tackles who are typically the best pass protectors. And what he has to do, though, his sacks can't come in bunches the way they did last year. Over the regular season, he only had sacks in 4 games. And so they were multi-sack performances, 1.5, 1.5, 2. And then there was another one where he just had 1 sack. And so if he wants to hit 10, you can't get those in just a couple of games. There's got to be more consistency in terms of your sack production. And so doing that over 7 or 8 games is going to be the key for him.
I agree. I like to see more consistency on a week in, week out basis. And look, sacks aren't everything. Like to see consistent pressure,
Yeah, and he talked about defending the run, and obviously that's where it's got to start because the pass rush is going to be there. It's been there for 5 years. The run defense, you got to get back to not being as leaky as it was last year.
And if he gets up into that double, if he does everything that we're saying that he needs to do, I mean, there's a potential we could be talking about him getting a contract extension next year.
Yeah, I wonder what the money would look like. I really couldn't tell you what that number might be. Not TJ Watt money, of course, but I don't know.
15, 16 million?
Is that? Yeah, I don't know what the going rate at the position is and how much that could change.
Question.
Bud Dupree got more than that, correct? And I think he was the better player, but we'll see. I mean, if Highsmith has a really good year, that conversation we're having right now could shift.
I mean,
as well.
Obviously, we don't think he'd have to do a lot to get himself into the $20 million range, right?
Sure. Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. So maybe it is 15. I just hadn't thought about the number or looked at the market, and that'll be a good problem to have if we're talking about 15 or 20 million this time next year.
I think 15 million gets him just inside the top 20. You got Carl Lawson making 15 million.
Okay. That sounds reasonable, I think.
Right?
Yeah. So, but again, hopefully he has a good
Bud
year.
Dupree, 16.5 million. So
Okay.
I think if he does everything that we're saying that he needs to do, and doesn't get up into, it'd be a good problem to have. We're talking about, man, Alex Highsmith had 17 sacks last year. You know what I'm saying? Hallelujah, praise Jesus if we get to talking about that. there. But I think if he does some of the things we talk about, I think we could be looking at, I don't know, $14-15 million potential market value for him.
Yeah, I mean, it's
either that, or they say, "Look, do it again," and we'll swap the franchise tag on you.
That's true as well. Quick interlude here. I mentioned earlier that maybe Orlando Brown Jr. might get a deal done with the Chiefs. That does not appear to be happening. His agent said a deal was not reached. There is time, I suppose, so you never know about a last-second offer that comes in. But it sounds like it'll be very quiet on the franchise tag deadline front today.
All right, how about some 90 and 30?
Yeah, let's do it. We'll start here with Larry Ogunjobi, a man we've talked about a lot and someone added to your list. And I think because whenever you started writing this series, Ogunjobi had not been signed, I don't believe, correct?
Right, that is correct.
So kind of added that to the list there. Ogunjobi, talked about him quite a bit, signed a 1-year deal worth $8 million. I look at his role kind of more sub-package pass rusher, nickel packages, whereas Chris Williams can be more of the base 3-4 defensive end. But a quality signing, and as we've talked about, really comes down to the health of that foot and just where he's at medically may determine the course of his season.
To me, that's where the conversation starts and stops. If you get that guy that was on the field last season before suffering that injury against the Raiders in the playoffs versus not getting that guy. If you get that guy, the positive side of that, the healthy Larry Ogunjobi, you get a guy that can be very disruptive interior as a pass rusher. We had Jonathan Heitritter look at Ogunjobi against the run. Obviously, that's the weaker side of his game, but I don't think it's as bad as the PFF scores make it out to be. He is a guy that I think anywhere from 600 to 700 snaps is probably the goal with him.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. And again, just can he be that one-gap penetrator against the run and get after it as a pass rusher in sub-package football? And that'll be the key there. And I just want to see day one of training camp. Is this guy a full participant? Is he limited? Is he working individual? Is he sitting out? Is there even a chance for pup? That'll be the first thing we look at in less than 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think it's a mini parade time at that point. If you get to the start of training camp and he does not have to start on active PUP. We broke this down the other day on the live stream, just to re-clarify to people. For a player to be eligible for reserve PUP come week 1 of the regular season, they will have had to have been, did I say that right? Will have had to have been on the active PUP list basically all training camp. Because once you practice once during training camp, you are no longer eligible for any PUP list, active or reserve PUP list. So in other words, if you got a question about a guy ahead of the season starting, he has to start off. He cannot practice in training camp. He must start on active PUP. He must stay on active PUP until week 1, and then you can move him to reserve PUP. If you have a player that practices and then is not ready for whatever reason by the start of the regular season, he must go on injured reserve.
Right, and for him to be able to return, you have to put him on your initial roster and then move him to IR. But I think I think it's really important to clarify the PUP rules on that, because some people will freak out about that, and you may have to do that again, especially if he does get placed on PUP. I know you will. But because the IR,
where you run into this, I think some people, as a player gets hurt during training camp, and then they say, "Well, just put him on PUP." Well, you can't do that.
Right. Or people think you get put on PUP to begin camp, that like, are you out for the season or are you out for the first 6 weeks? No, you can come off of active PUP at any point, and that's happened quite commonly. But I think with the IR to return, you can use that. It's not like, PUP is the option in terms of the to return ability. IR to return, you can come back after, I think it's 4 weeks. I believe they changed the week slightly this year, but that's an option. So even if he, let's say, wasn't placed on PUP to begin training camp, practice, wasn't ready for whatever reason, he could go on IR and then come back week 5 or week 6 or something like that.
Sure.
I think it's just important because in the old days it was IR, you were done for the year. And so that was sort of mechanism to return, and PUP was your mechanism to stash and then to return with the IR to return now, I think it makes PUP a little less relevant.
Look, we'll get this figured out here in a very short amount of time when Mike Tomlin holds that first press conference, we think, or the hours thereafter when teams have to decide who's going on active PUP or not.
Sure, and I don't mean to alarm anybody. For all we know, he's good day one, and this is not a conversation at all. And hopefully that's the case. So I don't mean to bring up all the IR stuff, but I just want to kind of lay out some of the options there. But hopefully, and I'd like to think that all of that would become a moot point.
I think it's a certain, based on what he said during the Sirius interview a few weeks ago about still being basically in, trying to get back to 100%. I think it's a mini parade worthy if he does not start off on active PUP.
Right, and that'll be a good place to start, and we'll see his role and see how he looks and moves and all that, and one of the many changes to this Steelers team for sure.
All right, Chikwama Okorafor, who just bought his mom and dad a house. Wasn't that a nice story?
Yeah, congrats to him. Great gesture there, and he can do that on the back of that $30 million deal. I know it's structured in a sense where Pittsburgh is basically pay-as-you-go style with it, but Okorafor for the here and now for 2022 will be this team's right tackle. Not my, ideal version of a right tackle, but there's something to be said about consistency, continuity, and he's been serviceable. And my old adage for Okorafor is the best offensive lineman on a bad offensive line, the worst offensive lineman on a good offensive line. It was more of the former last year.
He needs to take another step forward.
What do you think that step is and looks like?
He's got to be better. He's got to be better he's got to hold up better in pass protection first and foremost for a longer. We got to see if he's able to do that. Period.
I think the big issue he had last year was defending inside counters and inside rushes. I think he seals the edge well. I think he tends to be aggressive and tries to assume an outside rush. He gets beat to the inside quite a bit. I generally think, though, that he's largely a maxed out type player, and I wonder about maybe the lack of play strength and functional strength in Pat Meyer's more aggressive pass set system. Is that going to be a problem for him? Is he going to have the size and the strength overall to short set and quick set and chase down some of these wider aligned defensive ends? And so I wonder how that's going to look. But I know he's still a pretty young guy overall.
That's what I was going to hit on is, man, he's still, it's amazing how young he is.
24?
He's going to be 25 in like August, right?
Okay, so about to be 25, which is kind of crazy, but I feel like this dude's, because he's played a lot of football, he's been in the league for quite some time, and I feel like he's pretty close to being, he's a little Terrell Edmonds-like. He's young, but he's played a lot of football, and he's close to being maxed out.
Right. Whether we will have a finality on him after this season, I think.
Yeah, I kind of already feel like I know who this guy is, but I'm happy to be wrong, and I think there is room for growth. And
I do too.
I think, again, some of the pass pro technique stuff he can get cleaned up, but I do wonder, will he fit well? Because, like Pat Meyer liked the Russell Okung type guys, and I don't see Okorafor as having that size and style.
How obvious, and it's a Captain Obvious statement, but how he plays in 2022 will decide whether not he plays out that contract, I think.
Right.
And if he does play out that contract, obviously things are going well, and he'll be young enough where he could still hit another payday. You know what?
Yeah, really a big year for both tackles. We talked about Dan Moore, wrote the article today. Is Dan Moore the answer at left tackle? I don't know. This is the year to figure that out. Maybe, but this truly will define, I think, his future with the team.
All right, and hopefully Okorafor can obviously stay healthy.
Yeah, and then Chris Oladokun. Really, it's will Mason Rudolph get traded? How many reps will this guy get? There's not going to be the rest and veteran days for Trubisky or Pickett or Rudolph the way that there were for Ben, and so getting reps is number 4. Whenever Ben practiced full last year, on those days, Josh Dobbs did not get a single rep in team work. And so it's a lot of mental reps. It's a lot of trying to maximize your opportunity. The chance for playtime for Oladokun will be small as his team, more importantly, tries to figure out what they have in Trubisky and Pickett and how to handle that situation. Oladokun right now, for lack of a better phrase, is the afterthought in that room.
Yeah, I think we'll see him in some fourth quarter of some preseason games, and then we'll see what happens from there. Is he a guy that ultimately is the number 3 after Mason Rudolph? Something happens to him, or is this a guy that opens up on your practice squad and basically serves as your Lamar Jackson prep guy for the next, for his rookie season?
Yeah, dude's got a good arm, good mobility. I imagine he'll be scrambling for some first downs in that fourth quarter when your fourth string offensive line is not protecting all that well. And so that'll be an asset for him the way that it was for Josh Dobbs throughout his Steelers career. I think even if Mason Rudolph is not on this roster, let's assume he is traded at the end of training camp, end of the summer. I still think Oladokun could become the number 3, but on the practice squad, and they would only carry 2 quarterbacks on the 53. I don't know if they're because they done that when they traded Dobbs. They only had 2. It was just Ben and Mason, and I think they could do the same with Pickett and Trubisky and have Oladokun on the practice squad.
All right, we'll see. We'll definitely get an idea of how Omar Khan's thoughts are on the whole 2 quarterback thing.
Definitely, it's a little bit more new age, quote unquote, in terms of the 2 quarterbacks thing, which seems to fit Khan a little bit more the newer school mentality. So I could see that happening. But again, with Oladokun, it's just how many reps can this guy get is just going to be the issue. How much can you really learn about this guy if he's getting 80 reps in training camp and playing a couple of final drives in a preseason game? It's just going to be tough to evaluate him.
Right.
Gunnar Olszewski signed over to replace essentially Ray McLeod as his team's presumably starting kick and punt returner. Had an all-pro season 2 years ago, was not tendered by New England, and signed a 2-year deal in Pittsburgh. Should offer more than McLeod in the sense of being a coverage guy as well, so really can become a multi-phase special teamer beyond just in the return game. And, how much will he contribute offensively? I think it'll be minimal, but we'll get into camp and see how Matt Canada wants to use him.
Absolutely with him. And look, I'm not, he hasn't played. He has had some snaps in the slot, but he has 9 career NFL receptions, I think, to date. He is going to be an emergency slot player more than anything. I mean, I would expect we would see him get a little bit of that work during the preseason, but this guy's a return guy. This is a Danny Smith room edition. There went Ray McLeod. What do you got for me? Kind of thing. And if you're going to bring in a guy like this, he better win. He better be your returner. He both punt and kickoffs. He better make impacts on a coverage team or 2. And I'd like to see 1 or 2 taken to the house, or at least 60, 70 yards.
Yeah, last time Pittsburgh had a kick return touchdown was Juju, I believe, in 2017 in that finale against the Browns. I was actually researching this, and the information was not as interesting as I thought it might be. That drought sounds like a long time for Pittsburgh. It's not that long relative to the rest of the NFL. I can pull up the data I was working on a couple weeks ago. There are teams with much longer kick return droughts than that.
For touchdowns?
Yeah, I'm trying to see here if I have some of my data up. Green Bay hasn't happened since 2011. Same with the Raiders. Philadelphia 2016, Giants 2015. But obviously, you'd like to see some splash there. But Olszewski's ability to do kicks and punts, that's important. Not everybody can do both. He's done it at a pretty high level as well. And that should endear himself well to Danny Smith.
Look, this offense needs help any way that they can get help. More probably as much, and give me it wherever you can get it. And if that means flipping the field on the other side of the 50 with a punt or kick return, that's what they need. And they're going to need it from the defense. One of my terrible take a couple of days ago was we concentrate so much on this defense has led the NFL in sacks the last 5 years, and that's fantastic. And they might they've got a good chance, right, to lead the league in sacks again, a 6th consecutive season. You would not be shocked if that happens, correct?
Not at all.
All right, but where the downturn has been is the takeaways. I think were 14th ranked and tied for 14th overall in the league last year. We need to see these takeaways back in top 5. If this team's going to have success, I could stomach them sliding down that sack list, stay in the top 5, but increase up into the top 5 in takeaways, and then also just limit those explosive plays, and if you go back and look at the explosive plays last year, the number was high overall, but they were also very high in explosive plays against the run. So if you get those running explosive plays back in line, if you get the sacks in the top 5 and the turnovers in the top 5, you're going to put your offense in a lot more favorable positions. And if you could get some, nice return average on the year. In fact, your best ever or best in the Danny Smith era. That feels funny to say, but it does feel like an era with.
It's been about a decade. He's been special teams coordinator.
Right, that's what I'm saying. With him. Then that's another way that you can help this offense as well, too. And this, make no mistake about it, folks, this offense is going to need that kind of help from every single angle.
Yeah, I think it's a great point you make about the field position aspect of it. And it's not even always just about the 60-yard return, but just can you eke out consistently the extra 5 yards? So you're not starting at the 25, you're at the 30. And Pittsburgh's long kick return last year was 40 yards. Their long punt return last year was 23 yards. I thought McLeod was a fine player overall, but you want to see more splash there. You want to see at least 1 or 2 returns go longer than that, and just having consistently good field position is going to be really critical. And so, ball security, number one thing with him, and then just being able to consistently, I think, establish good starting field position is going to help this offense. And they, as you said, need all the help they can get.
All right.
And then let's see, we are on Chris Owens, next undrafted free agent out of Alabama. Had an interview with him a couple weeks ago. Good guy to talk to. Versatility will be his key. Can he be this year's Sean LeGlue? Unheralded player, doesn't have maybe the ideal size overall, but he's played center, he's played tackle, he's played guard. Pittsburgh is using him more as a guard right now. He played that less in college. He did it at center and right tackle, but he's going to have to make that transition to that guard spot. But the more you can do, the more hats you can wear, the more value you present, and that'll be his ticket to sticking around on this team.
I agree, and it's one of those guys, especially with these undrafted offensive linemen. You really want to see what happens during the preseason and training camp to draw a better outline of what you think they may or may not be. So it's kind of hard, with how he was used at Alabama and all like that, but definitely position flexible, you would think, and that's going to play a part in him. I kind of view him more as a practice squad type player, at least where I'm at now. But as we've seen in the past before, those offensive linemen can get up on the 53 in a hurry.
Yeah, look at LeGlue. LeGlue started on the practice squad last year, if I'm not mistaken, then got called up and all the injuries struck and ended up finishing out the year as his team's starting left guard. And so he's just got to become good friends with John LeGlue and follow what LeGlue did, and even offered a long snap. LeGlue was doing that. There is no backup long snapper on this team. On some of the side work on special team sessions when everyone else is taking a break before practice, get some long snap work in. Whatever you can do to create your value and show that do anything attitude is going to put yourself in the best position possible to stick. And it's about sticking, as you said, not even making the 53. That's great. That's the goal. But practice squad, injury strike, you can get elevated. Keep yourself in that building. That's the key.
Survive the cuts.
Yeah, survive and advance. And the last player here is George Pickens. Dave, what are your expectations for George Pickens in year number 1?
I think that realistically, if he could hit, 45 catches, 6 or 7 touchdowns, whatever you want to take that 45 times it by about 14 yards per catch. So
what's that work out to? About 630, about 600, 650?
Yeah, I think that's ideal with him. I think if you hit that, I think you're really, really looking up when it comes to 2023 and beyond.
If that was the line, let's say 45, 650, 6 touchdown season, this may sound like a hot take that people is going to get mad about. I would take the under on all 3 of those numbers. And I like
that's why I threw it out as a best case scenario. Right. I would take the under too, but I think that feels like, unless there's a lot of injuries, that feels like the high point ceiling for him as a rookie.
Well, what do you think is the actual expectation for him? And my question was, what are you expecting from him? I mean, obviously, if he hits those numbers, that's fantastic. But what do you think?
I think anywhere from like 30 to 45 catches.
Yeah. That's my thought. I was thinking around 30 receptions as well. It's a little, and I've mentioned this before.
People are not going to want to hear it.
No, they're going to get mad at me for this. It's a little Martavis Bryant-like. And listen, I like Pickens. He was my favorite pick of the entire draft. I think the talent is immense, but the dude is 21. He only played 4 games last year. He has not played a lot of football recently.
Here's the thing about him that's going to that might make it easier for Calvin Austin to get implemented in easier than Pickens is the fact that Pickens, for his entire college career, played only about the equivalent of snaps of one full NFL season, a little over 1,000 snaps.
Right.
All right. So there is, like it or not, there is going to be an adjustment period at the NFL level for Pickens and how he navigates that and how they allow him to navigate that is going to go a long way. He's talented. This is not anything that we're saying about him is not anything related to a slight about him and his talent. It's all about making that jump to the NFL level, experience, seeing more coverages, playing more multiple positions, just getting acclimated to the NFL. And if the Steelers don't have injuries in front of him, and if they do, and it's a big if and do they do use have an uptick in 2 tight end personnel groupings, then how are you going to get this guy on? He'll get on the field. It's just at what rate and where is this? How his target's going to be mixed in there? Once again, he could be a guy with 45, 606. Okay, but that isn't, to me, feels like the top end for him, especially if there's no injuries. If he acclimates real well from week 1 and on, I think he could hit the 45, 606 numbers. However, if he's brought along slow, I think you're looking more realistically at the 30. What's 30 times 14 yards per catch?
Right. Let me get that for you. 420.
And 4 touchdowns,
Yeah. Here's my thing on Pickens. The talent is immense. The upside is immense. It's just going to require some patience and some time. And again, I think it's very Martavis Bryant-like. Even their numbers in college. I mean, I just pulled them up. Bryant had 13 touchdowns in college. Pickens had 14. Bryant had 1,354 yards in college. Pickens had 1,347 yards in college. Pickens did have more receptions. I will give him that, but he didn't. He barely played last year because he was coming off the ACL tear. So I think it just will take time. I think Pittsburgh's going to throw the ball less overall. You definitely will see more of an emphasis on the ground game overall. You may see more of those 2 tight ends and heavier personnel. And I think Pickens will get better as the season goes along. But I'm just tempering expectations out of the gate for George Pickens.
Here's a good thing, though, too. When you do put him on the field, especially in run situations, this is a guy that's not afraid to put people on their butt. So you're not – I don't think you're going to be afraid to put him out on the field in run situations, too. And Phil, in other words, when he's out there, I don't think you're going to be obligated to throw.
No, of course not. I agree. I still want to know exactly where he'll see the most snaps at. Is it the X? Is it the Z? Is it inside at the F, the slot?
Great question, because primarily an X at Georgia. However, saw a little bit of Z. And although I don't think you're going to find a lot of slot stuff in game action at Georgia. He did say that he played some of that in practices at the very least.
Right. So my inclination is more Z type, especially if Claypool is going to kick to the slot more this year. I think Pickens fits best on the outside. They're on the more run strength, a bit more vertical type of guy. The route tree is a little less. You go
deep.
Yeah. So that's kind of the ideal to start, but we'll just have to wait and see. But I just want to, and maybe I'm wrong about this, and this guy is just Jamar Chase 2.0, and I'd be extremely happy about that. I will gladly eat that kind of crow, but I think it will take a bit of time. I mean, even Mike Tomlin called him wrong. And if your head coach was calling you wrong, that says something.
Look, you would. My thing is get him on the field when you can. More so as a Z. Get some big plays out of him down the field. Get him some confidence that way. Occasionally, give him some work where he is familiar at in the X. And then, depending on what happens with Deontay Johnson, his contract, this could be a guy that's, more of your X moving forward.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this time next year, we may be talking about George Pickens as your X receiver, your upcoming number one. That's certainly possible. And again, I'm really excited about this guy, the fluidity that he has, despite kind of being a bit more of a lankier, longer type of guy. The strength in his hands, the body control, the high degree of difficulty catches, the run blocking, the demeanor, the upside, all the things he doesn't know right now that he will learn. I think Frisman Jackson will really teach this guy extremely well. But just for the here and now, I just want to take expectations and turn them down a couple of notches.
Yeah, look, if he hits 45 catches and 600 yards or more, something's probably happened.
Either really good or really bad. Yeah, one of those two things.
Right. And obviously, if he hits those kind of numbers, I mean, it gives you even a lot more comfort in what he might become down the road. But if he does hit those numbers, then probably something's happened elsewhere in the wide receiver room that led to that.
Yeah. If I had to give a rough projection, and what happens in camp certainly can and will change things about what a rookie stat line for him could look like, I would say something like 25 catches for 400-ish yards and 3 touchdowns is kind of where I'm at for a rookie season for George Pickens.
I'm hoping he can at least get to the 30 mark.
Yeah. I mean, Martavis got 26 despite playing, only a little more than half the season. I don't think it'll be quite Bryant-like out of the gate, but it's just kind of the same framework I'm working off of.
Now, I tell you what, Martavis Bryant, when he finally did hit the field, he made it where he couldn't take him off the field.
Yeah, I'm looking at his rookie season. He had 8 touchdowns on just 26 catches. I mean, just 21 yards per reception, 94-yard touchdown in there. I mean, just what could have been. There's so many what could have beens in Pittsburgh. It's crazy. Anyway,
if Le'Veon Bell finds that time machine, I hope he goes back and picks up Antonio Brown and Martavis Bryant.
Right. Yeah, for sure. So that's going to wrap up this edition of 90 and 30. How many more of these do we have left? We got one.
Are we going to get enough in? Are we going to have to triple up here pretty soon?
We may have to go to 3 a days here. We got 1, 2, 3, 5. Yeah, we got more about 10 plus to go. So we may have to pick it up next week.
All right. Maybe we'll do in the 2 shows next week, we'll do 12 total, right? Will that get us there?
Do you want to quickly hit the next 3 right now?
Yeah, let's run through the next 3. It
should be fairly quicker. Kevin Rader, Mark Robinson, and Mason Rudolph. Kevin Rader, potential for a number 3 tight end. Connor Heyward may be stealing that spot. I think Rader's a good blocker, quality coverage guy. Probably still looking practice squad for him. But
feels like practice squad for him.
But if Connor Heyward struggles, and again, I don't view him as an actual tight end, then there may be an opportunity there for Kevin Rader.
Yeah, look, if we get into a position where we're having to talk a lot about Kevin Rader during the 2022 season, something's gone wrong. But we know he can block, and we know he can play a little bit on special teams. Is that enough to keep him around on the practice squad? Should he not make the 53?
Yeah, I think he'll be on practice squad. And listen, because Hayward's not a traditional inline wide tight end, all it takes is one injury to Freiermuth or Gentry, and Rader's going to get the call up.
Right.
And do you think those guys are going to play every single snap, all 17 games? I mean, someone's probably bound to get nicked up at some point. So I think you'll see Kevin Rader at some point this year, just probably not week 1.
Right.
Mark Robinson, 7th round pick, run and hit linebacker, former running back at Presbyterian, and then switched to linebacker at Ole Miss, got the starting job and had a really good season overall. Undersized, questions about the overall athleticism and coverage, and there's going to be so much new to him, such a big adjustment for him to make, but that's a guy that I think will have a couple of big body blows on special teams on some kick and punt coverage.
To get to 53, he's got to have Danny Smith in his corner. I think it's plain and simple. Otherwise, and look, he's going to have to continue to learn the linebacker position. All right. That's going to take time. You're not going to just throw him right out there. If he's having to play meaningful snaps, then something else bad has happened,
Yeah.
When it comes to that, I think it's a big achievement for him if he makes the 53 as a core special teamer. I think that's fan-freaking-tastic.
I think whenever in camp this summer, whenever he sees the football, it's going to look great. He's going to come down in the line and pop some guys, and you're going to feel that presence of Mark Robinson when he sees the football. Everything else he's going to look like a rookie that has not done very much of this. Has this guy really even played on special teams before? Was he even doing that? Because he was a starting linebacker last year. I don't know how much he was doing it at Presbyterian. So even that might be new to him. So there was just so much new there. It's hard for me to see him making it. Again, I think he will have his moments of being that missile in a line downhill, but football is so much more than just that. And I think it's going to really make him a prime practice squad candidate to begin his career.
His path to the 53 goes through Danny Smith. And if he doesn't get there that way, then he's practice squad.
Exactly. And then Mason Rudolph, and we talked about Mason quite a bit. I know he's being framed as part of this quarterback competition, this battle. I think it would take a lot for him to have to start week one. It's really a question of, will he be a Steeler come week one? And that's dependent on a lot of factors, what happens with other quarterbacks around the league, whenever an injury strikes, if an injury strikes and things like that. But it will be interesting to see just how much the team uses him in camp, what his reps look like, and if they will be truly reflective of somebody in the middle of a quarterback battle.
Right. A good point. We'll learn a lot more during the training camp and preseason process. This guy could be out of Pittsburgh come week one altogether, or he could be the number 2 behind Mitch Trubisky opening up the season. Right. Or he could even be number 3, I suppose. But if he sticks around past week one, I would think he's sticking around to be the number 2 for Pickett to pass at some point during his rookie season. And then maybe, I don't know, maybe you get to before the trade line, and then maybe that's when Rudolph goes out the door.
Yeah, I know. Jonathan and I did an article debating should the team look to explore trading Rudolph, and there's value in keeping him just for injury protection. You don't have a 2019 scenario playing out all over again, God forbid, if one of the quarterbacks in front got hurt.
But if you only keep, you talked about keeping 2 quarterbacks, earlier, if you're only keeping 2, I'm going to go out on a limb and guarantee you that Kenny Pickett's going to be one of them.
That's why they pay you the big bucks.
That's right. That's why this podcast has made the progress that it has made since 2010 for statements like that.
I think he'd be willing to keep 3 if it was Rudolph, Pickett, and Trubisky. I was saying that would Oladokin really earn that spot as the number 3, maybe different with a 7th round pick that you could put on the practice squad as opposed to a more veteran type in Mason that you could not do that with. So we'll see on that. Again, with Rudolph, there's this battle between, you basically know what you have in Mason Rudolph, but yet you also want to afford him the opportunity to be part of this quarterback battle. But how does that translate into reps? Does that mean you're going to get your normal amount of reps? Does that mean you're going to get fewer reps because you need to learn everything you can learn about Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett? Again, it'll be really interesting to see how this team handles the quarterback reps. You get about, 50 of them each day in a training camp practice and team drills. How they split that up, to me, is going to be really fascinating.
All right. We are through. We will do, 9 more in the next show?
Yeah, we'll start Nick Skiba and finish up with Chris Steele. And so that'll be next show.
All right. Let's see here. Let's go to the email machine. Dan from Chicago writes in, thanks for all you do. Your podcasts are the soundtrack to my morning walks with my dog. Is generally the reason why my dog walks are so long. All right. He says, I'm thinking this is a good off-season question for you. I wanted to know if you could give us a top 5 wasted talents that the Steelers have ever had on the team. And to define it further, I would say these are people who suited up and maybe gave us some measure of games showcasing the brilliance of their talent, but never let us feeling like we got the full bite of the apple. I use that qualifier to exclude players like Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell, players who definitely left something on the table, but were also key cog for multiple years on a team. So the return on investment is definitely on the positive side. He says the one name that comes to me is Martavis Bryant. Who might you put on your list? So we're looking for kind of guys that kind of made it but didn't make it, I guess. Top 5 wasted talents overall. I mean, Martavis Bryant's got to be on any kind of list that you put on like that, because I remember specifically writing an article on the site somewhere about might Martavis Bryant or something along the lines of Martavis Bryant has a chance to become the NFL's best all-time deep threat. Oh, even better than Randy Moss.
Right.
Oh, Lord.
I mean, that was a little, crazy, but
there was a time.
Yeah, I mean, the talent was incredible. I mean, and I think that was the first thing that came to mind. We just talked about him as well. Whenever the reader asked that question, I think Bryant has to be head of the class on that list.
All right, who else would be on a wasted talents list? I mean, Sinquez Golson. I would have just liked to see Sinquez Golson play a preseason snap.
Yeah, I don't know what the talent was with him. The second name that came to mind, and wasted talent, it can be a little bit of a negative thing, and I want to be careful with that. But Kendrell Bell was the second name that came to mind for me.
Yeah, that's a good one too, because that ankle. Once he had that ankle, I mean, he lit it up up until that ankle injury, and then fell off the cliff.
Right. I mean, he was so good with the first 2 years. He was wasn't he rookie of the year? His first year, I think so. Yeah. I mean, and
defensive,
then it just fell right off.
Yeah, what he had, like eight 9,
sacks,
10, something like that. Sacks, and
so that's the second name. And it was the injury, right? It was nothing else. It was just kind of he got hurt and just never got back.
He never got back to that again. Yeah.
From there, some people will say Tuitt. I don't think Tuitt's the same as a Bryant or a Bell. I think there was more there with him. I understand it never was quite what it could have been, and there is a part of you wishing more from him with health and the off the field and stuff like that. But it just feels like Tuitt's not in the same camp as a Martavis Bryant. But I don't know if you feel differently about that, Dave.
Well, the thing is you. I would love to have 2020 Stephon Tuitt on his team right now.
Mm-hmm. Ryan Shazier, again, I hate to say wasted talent. Makes you feel kind of icky, but it is injury. I mean, Bell was hurt too.
Yeah.
Different injuries, but Gabe Rivera, Senor Sack. I heard some good things about him early in his rookie year. I know he's always, they passed on Marino, but Rivera was reportedly a good player before he got in that drunk driving accident, was paralyzed.
What about any running backs or other wide receivers that maybe I'm trying to Roy Jefferson, but you're kind of really going way back and stretching that. And he played a fair amount in Pittsburgh and just got traded. I mean, I'm sure we could think of some names there. I mean, top five but wasted talents makes you think something that like a talent was wasted.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, Marvel Smith played too long. He just had the back issues, but I wouldn't call that a wasted talent.
Was there any guards in there that you thought, oh man, this guy?
I mean, Lord Bam knows, Morris or Barry Foster.
Kevin Dotson might be added to this list if he doesn't get around in 2022, right? I mean, I'm not going to put him on the list yet, but this is a guy that has that felt like he has had a lot of talent that is yet to live up to it. Any defensive backs or other line? I mean, is Devin Bush qualifying that yet? I don't know.
Yeah, is that just like a miss? I don't know if you can put wasted talent and just, I mean, like I said, a Bam Morris, Barry Foster, I don't know if those guys would qualify, maybe a little bit. Bam had the off-field stuff that kind of ended his career earlier than it should have been.
All right, we'll throw it out to the listeners to see if they want to email us anybody to add to Dan. That's a good question, Dan. Appreciate that. That got some conversation going.
Do you know that Bam Morris played arena football in 2006, like 7 years after his NFL career?
Did he really? I probably know that somewhere
Wikipedia
in there.
Page on there with the Katy Copperheads. Anyway.
Rich Malik writes in, Rich from Prague, Czechoslovakia here. I'm a first-time emailer. Love your website and podcast. No other sources come close to the quality analysis insight. Your staff does a great job. Thanks to you all. I'll be visiting PA later this summer, and 3 generations of my family are planning to go to a day of training camp. God bless you, Rich. He says, we have tickets already. I'm only in town for the last 2 days of camp. So I'm wondering if the last day of camp is better or worse or the same as most other days to attend, potentially due to roster battles, easier last day of work, or some other reason. Alex is the perfect person to answer that question because Alex has been to a lot of last 2 days of training camp. So what's better, the second to the last day or the last day?
I mean, it sometimes just depends if they're in shells that day or if they're in full pads, and that can just depend on the schedule. And I don't know what it's going to look like. It's hard to project this far out. Typically, things begin to ramp down at the end of camp. And there's going to be 18 of these practices this year. So by the end, things may have quieted down a little bit. So I don't think it'll be as intense or as hyped up as it will be with, like, when the first day of pads come on. I think the fourth day of training camp. So it may be a little ratcheted down, but it should still be a good time.
Well, what will rosters be at that point?
They'll have what, 2 cuts maybe already, or 1 cut. They'll be down to at least 85, if not 80 at that point.
All right. So a little bit smaller group they'll be dealing with at that point. All right. Got another question here and we apologize, we're going to run a little bit long, it looks like. With all the stadium talk over the last several days, with Heinz Field becoming Acrisure Stadium, who actually owns the stadium? Owns. Oh, you haven't seen...
I don't know what that was.
You got to add Slapshot is the next sports movie. The uncut version, Slapshot, is the next sports movie you absolutely have to watch, Alex. Okay. And I think you'll actually like that better than taking your temperature off of Bull Durham. I think you might actually like that. But you got to watch Slapshot. You're a hockey fan.
Wait, is that what the brothers with the glasses? Is that them?
Yeah, the Hanson
I think I've
brothers.
seen that. Yeah, I've seen that. It was on TV. I don't think it was probably the censored version. It probably wasn't as good as it could have been.
You got to watch the uncut version. Anytime I hear the word owns, I think about that goaltender owns. But anyway, the actual who holds the pink slip? He says, Dave, you might have to explain to Alex what a pink slip is. All seriousness, you guys do a great job. Keep up the great work. Love the show. I mean, pink slip, obviously the reference comes way, way before, I think, even my time. Now, have I been fired before? I've been fired before. That might not be a huge surprise. Alex, have you ever been fired? You've never had a job.
This is my job. So you tell me, Dave, am I going to be fired? I think I'm okay. But
yeah, I think you're going to hang around another week here or so. We'll get your P's and Q's in line. But I don't think Alex has to worry about a pink slip any time in the near future. Who owns? I thought I had saw something and pulled that up. It's like the Pittsburgh something authority on.
Yeah,
something.
I just Googled who owns Heinz Field because I didn't want to have to spell Acrisure, and it said Sports and Exhibition Authority of Pittsburgh and Allegheny County. So I guess the county has it, and it's leased out to the Steelers, and that lease runs through 2030. Right,
and I think there's even some document that you can pull up that's got. Oh, wait. Sports Exhibition Authority of Pittsburgh and Allegheny County. Lease E is the PSSI Stadium Corporation. I thought I saw rent. The leasee shall pay the statutory rent and shall submit any required documentation with the respect the leasee and or PSSI covenant and agree to make 3 payments of statutory rent to the authority of $25 million each.
I was going to ask how much rent is.
How about that for next level analysis?
Yeah. I think half the listeners just fell asleep, but the other half, I think, is locked in on that. Where'd you even get that from? How do you even have that information?
Google, man. I am an expert Google.
What did you Google
Googler.
To pull up the lease agreement?
What did I was actually I Googled Sports and Exhibition Authority lease Heinz.
And that came up.
It's the third result, and it's at law.marquette.edu.
I guess it's a public document, huh?
It's a PDF. Yeah.
All right. Well, there you go. So $25 million. So that's
that. But we need that broken down.
Yeah.
Didn't that say 3? I'm going to read this to you again. Rent. The leasee shall pay, blah, 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 with provisions of Chapter 5 of the Capital Facility Acts. The leasee and or PSSI covenant and agree to make 3 payments of statutory rent to the authority of $25 million each. So does that mean that they've paid $75 through the first 20 years of this thing? Is that how you take that?
The problem is I didn't understand half of those words you read off.
I don't either. That's why I struggle. Needless to say, my parents gave up early on me becoming a lawyer.
There were dreams of that.
Probably before 6. Or
yeah. About 7 years old.
Yeah, that's
wipe those away. Yeah.
Yeah. That went out the door really, really quick. Then it became just don't become a ditch digger.
Yeah, don't become someone who needs a lawyer. That's what it became to. Yeah.
There you go. Exactly. Somewhere in between might be just fine. But the way I take it with this legal ease, and this is why I struggle so much with the CBA, is reading the legalese. Anyway, anybody that's better with this legalese, Google that and tell us if we're right that the Steelers have had to pay basically $75 million over the last 21 years.
Yeah. So anyway, good question. So I didn't know that, and so I've learned something today.
All right. Let's see here. Quarterback learning curve. Would you say Ben didn't really show much of a struggle from his first preseason? This is another good. We got some good questions here. Would you say Ben didn't really show much of any struggle from his first preseason on to the end of his first season, even considering how conservative the offense was in his first 3 years under Cowher and Wisenhunt? My point is, a mark of drafting a great quarterback is that he should be able to play or play well at some point in his first season, just like Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, or Joe Burrow as recent examples. I also think the NFL quarterback learning curve isn't as great as it used to be. More of these quarterbacks seem to be able to adapt faster or come from pro set in college. Brad, I'm going to be upfront and honest with you when it comes to Roethlisberger in the early days. If not for Roethlisberger, with the Ben becoming Ben as quickly as it did, and make no mistake, that was a calling card of his at the University of Miami. He was brought along slow. If you want to be truth on the matter there, I mean, you want to talk about a run heavy. Look at some of his how many pass attempts per game Roethlisberger had in those early days, Alex.
Yeah, it was the offense was and the team was built through its defense and its run game. Ben was the game manager. Just don't ruin it. That's how things started off in his career.
Right. And now make no mistake about it. I mean, you look at the his most attempts during his rookie season was 28. And that came in week 15 against the Giants. He had just 3 games of more than 24 attempts in a game. In his first, and this is starts, in his first 4 starts, he had 22, 25, 21 attempts. I mean, and in his final, basically what I'm getting at here is he had 295 total attempts, and we divide that by 14 games that he played in.
295 divided by 14, 21.07. So 21
there you go.
Now it helped that they were winning and they were sitting the ball in the fourth quarter and just running it. I mean, that obviously had played some factor in things.
Sure. Nothing like taking the air out of the football with Pittsburgh. And boy, would we kill to see that in 2022, right? And once again, this didn't take anything away from Roethlisberger, because a lot of the big plays that he made or that were made in that season were Ben being Ben, right? I mean, right. In fact, I've got the play on my timeline somewhere on Twitter of the actual play in the NFL where I think Ben became Ben, and taking that hit over on the sideline, extending the play against the Browns, and extending the play and throwing it down the field to Plaxico Burress there. Mm-hmm. But the first couple years in Pittsburgh, we're not talking about Peyton Manning here.
Well, Peyton Manning's rookie season was bad, actually, too. Right. But I think
what I mean from a cerebral,
sure,
that kind of player.
To answer the question about in a roundabout sense of what quarterbacks need to show in year number 1, I don't think you have to have it all together, at least in your first year playing, whatever that's year 1 or year 2. But you got to show moments and pockets of what got you drafted. And I'm sure even Peyton Manning in moments, although he threw a ton of interceptions his rookie year, had pockets and moments where things looked like they could be really good. And
what were Ben's moments in his first couple of years in the league?
Well, Ben had those Ben moments. The throw to Plexico, I think it was a throw against the Bengals where he was actually called down for a sack, but had a crazy extended play that almost worked. And like you saw those moments. Dallas, I want to say his rookie year, I think had some really impressive plays as well. And so as long as you show, it won't always be perfect. It's going to be uneven.
I thought you hit it perfect saying what got you drafted.
Right. If you show those moments and those flashes, and they're more than maybe just one play, but there's a handful of plays or a game where you say, okay, this thing, there's some real potential there. If you show that, I'm good. If not, then you get concerned. Right.
And will Kenny Pickett show us anything enough during the preseason and training camp of what got him drafted to warrant him eventually getting playing time?
We're going to find out. I don't know. I hope so. We'll see. But that would be the goal. If Pickett does play this year, and then you would say, let's say he does play half the games this year, you got to show pockets. And then by year 2, it's about finding consistency and putting it all together. That's kind of when that conversation starts.
All right. One more. Adam Guest, couple of questions. Can you cover what happened to Jameer Jones last year? I'm guessing we cut him and why. Delonte Scott actually got into a game last year, and despite only playing a few snaps, I thought he actually looked decent, unlike Tuska. I'm guessing you haven't talked about him because you think he has a very low ceiling. Is that true? Don't we still have Scott to go on the and Tuska on the? Have we hit those guys on the list?
No, we've not hit either yet. Those are early O's. Yeah.
That's why we haven't talked about those guys yet. So let's table that second question because we got Scott and Tuska coming up on the 90 and 30 series. Jameer Jones just never excelled as a pass rusher or defensive player, and his special teams wasn't enough to keep him around.
Yeah, it looks like he was waived whenever Derek Tuska was signed, and then the Rams claimed Jameer Jones off of waivers. So Pittsburgh may have been trying to put him on the practice squad and then lost him, obviously. And so that's what happened there.
But Adam, hang on to next week. We will hit Delonte Scott and Derek Tuska when it comes to them.
I will say, I'm not sure if Scott looked good. He played like 6 snaps. I don't think he was that good. So I'm not sure how much there's even a conclusion to be made from there, but we'll talk about him at a later date.
All right, Long Friday show. Let's see here. We will be back on Tuesday. We'll see what happens with DeShaun Watson if that news comes out. Anything worth talking about or writing about will be on SteelersDepot.com. You can follow me on Twitter at SteelersDepot. You can follow Alex Kozora at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version, go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button for $25. You can have a version of that. So in the meantime, until Tuesday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.